This world is filled with ancient monuments and mysteries that defy explanation. How could civilizations, supposedly without advanced tools, achieve feats so precise, so massive, and so impossible by today's standards? If they didn't build these wonders the way we think, then our history is wrong. And if great civilizations could rise, flourish, and then vanish without a trace, what does that mean for us? Could it happen again? From the sands of forgotten deserts to the depths of the oceans, enigmas wait to be uncovered. We'll explore 12 of the most astonishing mysteries ever discovered, each one rewriting what we thought we knew about our past. Are you ready to step into the unknown? The Great Pyramid of Giza, a monument beyond time. The Great Pyramid of Giza, towering above the sands of Egypt, is one of the most iconic structures on Earth. To the casual eye, it may appear to be nothing more than a massive stone tomb, built in honor of a single pharaoh, but when you look closely, the truth is far stranger and far more unsettling. This monument, standing for more than 4,500 years according to mainstream history, defies explanation in ways that modern science still struggles to answer. Its scale, precision, and enduring mystery have left scholars, engineers, and adventurers asking the same question for centuries. How could ancient builders, without cranes, steel, or computers, achieve something that seems impossible even today? The sheer size of the Great Pyramid is staggering. Over 2.3 million limestone and granite blocks were used, some weighing as much as 80 tons. Imagine trying to move even one of these colossal stones with nothing more than ropes, sledges, and manpower. Now multiply that by millions, and arrange them with such accuracy that the structure still stands firm thousands of years later, having survived earthquakes, erosion, and the relentless passage of time. And then consider this. The pyramid is aligned almost perfectly to true north. In fact, it is aligned more precisely than most modern buildings. How could ancient builders with no access to GPS or advanced surveying tools accomplish such a feat? Mainstream historians tell us that the pyramid was built around 2500 BC as the tomb of Pharaoh Khufu. It was, they claim, a grand funerary project taking decades to complete and requiring tens of thousands of workers. But when we dig deeper, contradictions appear. Despite its classification as a tomb, no body has ever been found inside. No mummy, no ornate sarcophagus filled with treasures, no inscriptions describing the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. In fact, the pyramid is curiously silent. Unlike other Egyptian monuments where hieroglyphs proudly declare purpose and power, the Great Pyramid contains none. Why would the Egyptians, who covered nearly every available surface of their tombs with religious texts and spells, leave their greatest monument completely bare? The mysteries only deepen when we explore the pyramid's mathematical secrets. Scholars have noted that the ratio of its perimeter to its height approximates 2p, the same constant found in circles. Others have pointed out that the dimensions of the pyramid seem to encode the golden ratio, a number celebrated in art, architecture, and nature. Was this simply coincidence? Or were the builders encoding universal knowledge into stone, knowledge that modern science would only rediscover thousands of years later? And if so, how could they possibly have known these constants without advanced mathematics? Another anomaly lies in the internal structure. The so-called King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, and the Grand Gallery are aligned with remarkable precision. Their joints cut so tightly that a blade cannot pass between the stones. Even today, constructing such chambers inside a solid mass of stone would be a challenge requiring modern machinery. Yet the ancient Egyptians supposedly managed it with copper chisels and manpower alone. Could it really have been so simple? And then there is the question of erosion. Some researchers claim that the weathering patterns on the pyramid stone suggest exposure to heavy rainfall, which has not been seen in the Giza plateau for thousands of years before Khufu's reign. If true, this would push the construction date back far earlier than 2500 BC. Perhaps to a time when Egypt was a lush and fertile land, long before recorded history. Could the Great Pyramid be much older than we think? If so, who built it? Theories abound, each one more fascinating than the last. The mainstream view holds firm. It was a tomb, nothing more, an extraordinary demonstration of ancient Egyptian ingenuity. Yet alternative explanations have grown louder over the years. Some suggest that the pyramid was an astronomical observatory, aligned with the stars in ways that mark solstices, equinoxes, and even the precession of the Earth's axis. Could it have been a tool to track the heavens, a calendar in stone? Others propose that the pyramid was built not as a tomb, but as a kind of power plant, designed to generate energy through vibrations or water flow, channeling natural forces in ways we are only beginning to understand. It may sound like science fiction, but when we look at the precision, the alignment, and the sheer ambition of the structure, the question lingers. Did the builders know something we have forgotten? Still others suggest that the pyramid is not Egyptian at all, but the legacy of a civilization lost to time, a culture that flourished long before recorded history, perhaps even before the last ice age, and whose knowledge was later inherited by the Egyptians. In this view, Khufu may have claimed the pyramid as his own, but he was not its builder. If that is the case, then the Great Pyramid is not just a monument, but a message from a forgotten world, whispering to us across the millennia. Skeptics, of course, argue against such ideas, pointing out that the Egyptians were capable of remarkable feats of engineering. They note the organized labor, the ingenious use of ramps, and the ability of human determination to achieve wonders. Yet even they admit that certain details remain unexplained. Why build with such massive stones when smaller, lighter blocks would have been easier? Why encode mathematical constants into the dimensions? Why align the pyramid with the stars? And why, above all, leave the interior so empty, so silent, so mysterious? The Great Pyramid stands as a challenge to our understanding of history. Was it a tomb, a temple, a machine, or a relic of a forgotten age? The truth may be buried in the sands of time, but the questions remain, haunting and irresistible. What knowledge was lost when the builders vanished? What secrets lie hidden within the stones? Could it be that our ancestors were not as primitive as we assume? That they tapped into knowledge we cannot comprehend? As the desert winds sweep across the plateau, the pyramid endures, silent and immovable, a monument beyond time. It dares us to question, to doubt, and to wonder. And if the desert can hold secrets this vast, what might wait beneath the sea? Beneath the sea. The lost city of Dwarka, a sunken enigma for centuries, the story of Dwarka was considered nothing more than a myth, a tale preserved in ancient Indian texts, written in the epic of the Mahabharata. According to legend, Dwarka was a city of dazzling splendor, founded by Lord Krishna himself, a city so advanced, so beautiful, and so extraordinary that it was said to rival the heavens. But the story does not end with its glory. In the Mahabharata, Dwarka is eventually swallowed by the sea, disappearing beneath the waves as if it had never existed at all. For generations, scholars dismiss this tale as pure mythology, a story meant to inspire devotion rather than recount history. And yet, in the last few decades, evidence has emerged that suggests the legend may hold far more truth than anyone ever imagined. Could it be that Dwarka, the mythical city of the gods, was a real place? In the waters off the coast of modern-day Gujarat, India, divers and marine archaeologists have discovered structures that defy explanation. Submerged nearly 120 feet below the surface, miles offshore, are what appear to be the remnants of walls, streets, and foundations. At first glance, they look like natural rock formations, but on closer inspection, many show signs of deliberate design. Straight edges, right angles, and carefully laid stones. Could these be the ruins of an ancient city? One that has been hidden beneath the sea for thousands of years? The paradox becomes clear when we consider the dating of these finds. Some artifacts retrieved from the seabed have been carbon dated to nearly 9,000 years old, placing them around 7,000 BC. This is thousands of years older than the earliest known cities of Mesopotamia or Egypt. If these dates are accurate, then the structures off the coast of Dwarka may represent one of the oldest civilizations ever discovered, a civilization that existed long before the accepted timeline of human history. But how is this possible? According to mainstream archaeology, organized cities, with planned streets and complex architecture, did not appear until around 3000 BC. So how could a city have existed thousands of years before, only to vanish beneath the waves? The mainstream explanation, as always, is cautious. Many scholars argue that the supposed ruins are nothing more than natural rock formations, shaped by currents and geological forces into patterns that mimic human construction. They point to the lack of unambiguous evidence. No complete buildings, no inscriptions, no obvious signs of urban life preserved in the stone. Others suggest that if there was settlement here, it may have been a much later city, perhaps medieval, that collapsed into the sea due to erosion or tectonic activity. In this view, the story of Dwarka in the Mahabharata is just a coincidence, a myth that happens to resemble a natural phenomenon. But does that explanation really hold up? Because when we examine the anomalies, the story takes a different turn. Divers have reported finding what appear to be streets running parallel, as if part of a grid. Large rectangular blocks are arranged in lines, too precise to be the result of natural forces. Stone anchors, pottery shards, and other artifacts have been pulled from the site, some dating back thousands of years before any known civilization in the region. If these are genuine, then they suggest not just settlement, but a thriving community engaged in trade and maritime activity, long before history books say such things were possible. Could it be that the ruins beneath the waves are indeed the remnants of Dwarka, the lost city of legend? Even more intriguing is the timing of its disappearance. Around 10,000 to 7,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, sea levels rose dramatically as glaciers melted. Vast stretches of land were swallowed by the oceans, drowning coastlines, valleys, and perhaps entire cities. Could Dwarka have been one of these casualties of rising seas? If so, then the legend of a city swallowed by the ocean is not just poetic allegory, it is historical memory. The people who lived there may have witnessed their world being consumed by water, their city destroyed in a cataclysmic flood. And if they passed that story down, generation after generation, it could have eventually become the tale we now know as the Mahabharata. Is it possible that ancient myths are in fact echoes of real events from deep prehistory? The implications are enormous. If Dwarka truly dates back 9,000 years, it rewrites human history. It suggests that advanced urban centers existed long before Mesopotamia, Egypt, or the Indus Valley civilization. It hints that humanity's story is not one of slow linear progress, but of rises and falls, of civilizations that flourished and then vanished, leaving behind little more than legends. Could it be that Dwarka is evidence of an Ice Age civilization, lost to time, remembered only in myth? The hypotheses are many, each one more fascinating than the last. Some believe Dwarka was indeed the city of Lord Krishna, preserved in memory through the Mahabharata, a real place deified over time. Others argue it was one of many advanced settlements destroyed at the end of the Ice Age, proof that humanity's achievements stretch far further back than we dare admit. And there are those who see Dwarka as part of a global pattern, lost cities beneath the sea, from Yonaguni in Japan to submerged ruins in the Mediterranean, evidence of a forgotten chapter of human history when advanced societies flourished, only to be wiped away by catastrophic floods. Skeptics push back, of course, reminding us of the dangers of seeing patterns where none exist. They warn that straight lines in stone do not necessarily mean human hands, that artifacts can be misdated, that legends can be retrofitted to match new discoveries. But even they cannot deny the allure of the mystery. Why are so many of the world's myths filled with stories of cities swallowed by the sea? Why do so many ancient cultures speak of floods, cataclysms, and vanished golden ages? Could they all be wrong? Or are they all remembering the same event, seen through different eyes, retold in different words? Dwarka, whether myth or reality, forces us to confront these questions. If the ruins beneath the Arabian Sea are indeed the city of legend, then our entire understanding of history changes. It would mean that human civilization is far older, far more complex, and far more fragile than we have believed. It would mean that the stories we call myths may not be inventions of imagination, but records of truth, distorted by time yet never entirely forgotten. And it would mean that our current age of progress is not unique, but just one in a series destined to rise and perhaps one day to fall. Imagine for a moment what it would mean if Dwarka were proven real. A city of stone and splendor existing 9,000 years ago, thriving on trade and knowledge, only to be swallowed by the rising seas. Imagine its people watching helplessly as the waters rose, as their homes and temples disappeared as their world ended. And imagine those same people telling their children the story, preserving the memory of loss so powerful that it survived for thousands of years, eventually becoming the tale of Krishna's city. Could that really be coincidence? Or is it evidence that myth and history are two sides of the same coin? The mystery of Dwarka continues to this day. Expeditions dive into the waters, scanning the seabed, pulling up fragments of stone and pottery, piecing together the puzzle one shard at a time. Some claim we are on the verge of rewriting history. Others insist it is nothing more than rocks and wishful thinking. But one thing is certain, the story will not go away. The sea does not give up its secrets easily, but it never hides them completely. The lost city of Dwarka stands as a tantalizing enigma, blurring the line between legend and reality. Whether it was truly the city of Lord Krishna, an Ice Age metropolis, or simply a geological curiosity, it challenges us to rethink what we know about the past. And as we search for answers beneath the waves, we must also ask, if one city could vanish so completely, how many others have we lost? How much of our story is still waiting to be found at the bottom of the oceans? If the desert can guard monuments like the Great Pyramid, then surely the ocean can guard forgotten worlds. And if Dwarka is just the beginning, what else lies hidden, waiting beneath the ice? The pyramids of Antarctica, a civilization buried in ice. Far to the south, in one of the most remote and inhospitable places on Earth, lies a mystery that has baffled scientists, explorers, and conspiracy theorists alike. Antarctica, a frozen desert of ice and snow, seems the last place one would expect to find evidence of ancient architecture. Yet satellite images have revealed formations so striking, so perfectly triangular that many cannot help but wonder, are these natural mountains, or could they be pyramids, monuments buried beneath the ice? The hook of this enigma lies in the images themselves. From above, several peaks stand out, their sides rising with such clean lines and sharp angles that they appear almost man-made. They bear an uncanny resemblance to the pyramids of Egypt or Mesoamerica. Yet they are found not in a fertile valley, but in a land of ice and storms. How could such shapes form naturally, especially in such an unforgiving environment? And if they are not natural, then who built them and when? They are not natural, then who built them and when? The paradox grows deeper when we remember that Antarctica is not a hospitable continent. For millions of years it has been covered by ice, with temperatures dropping so low that survival for humans would have been nearly impossible. If the structures truly are pyramids, then they must have been built during a time when Antarctica was ice-free, perhaps tens of thousands of years ago. Geological studies suggest that the continent was once green, covered in forests and home to rivers and valleys. But that was long before any civilization we know of. Could it be that an advanced society lived here in a forgotten chapter of history and left behind monuments that still stand today? Mainstream science, of course, is skeptical. Geologists point out that mountains often take on triangular shapes through natural processes of erosion, wind, and ice movement. What looks like perfect geometry from above may be nothing more than the result of countless years of weathering. They argue that the so-called pyramids of Antarctica are simply nunataks, mountain peaks that poke through the ice, shaped into angular forms by the harsh environment. But does this explanation really account for the striking symmetry seen in the images? Can erosion alone create shapes that look so deliberate, so precise, so unmistakably artificial? The anomalies are hard to ignore. Some of the peaks show sides aligned at near-perfect angles, resembling the symmetry of true pyramids. Even more curious, multiple such peaks appear in the same region, creating the impression of a complex rather than a lone geological oddity. Is it coincidence that several of these formations stand together, each resembling human-made structures, or does it suggest something more? Could we be looking at the frozen remains of a lost architectural achievement? A forgotten city swallowed by the ice? Hypotheses have flourished around these icy enigmas. The most conservative explanation insists that they are natural geology, mountains sculpted by wind, ice, and time. Another possibility, however, is that the formations conceal something more. Structures built long ago, now buried under layers of ice. Could ancient people, or even an advanced civilization we no longer remember, have lived on a warmer Antarctica, constructing monuments that survived the ages only to be hidden by the advancing ice sheets? Some even suggest that these pyramids could belong to a civilization older than Egypt, older than Mesopotamia, one that thrived before the world as we know it began. And then there are the boldest theories, which claim Antarctica itself holds secrets deliberately erased from history. Some point to old maps like the Piri Reis map of the 16th century, which appears to show Antarctica without ice. How could such a map exist if no one had ever seen the continent in a warmer age? Did ancient sailors chart these lands long before recorded history? Did they see the pyramids rising above green valleys where now only ice and snow remain? Skeptics dismiss these ideas as fantasy, insisting that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that so far no proof has emerged. No excavations, no artifacts, no inscriptions have been found to prove human hands shaped these peaks. Yet the mystery endures, fueled by the images that seem too precise, too deliberate to ignore. If they truly are natural, why do they so closely mimic humanity's most iconic architectural form? Why does the pyramid shape again and again appear across the globe from Egypt to Mesoamerica, and now perhaps even Antarctica? Is it coincidence, or is there a deeper pattern we have yet to uncover? The pyramids of Antarctica, whether natural or man-made, force us to confront the limits of our knowledge. If they are natural, they stand as one of the most extraordinary coincidences of geology, mountains that mimic the greatest monuments of human civilization. But if they are artificial, the implications are staggering. It would mean that tens of thousands of years ago, a civilization capable of monumental architecture thrived in Antarctica, only to vanish without a trace, erased by ice and time. What would such a revelation mean for our understanding of history? Could it prove that humanity's story is far older, far more complex than we dare admit? As the winds howl across the icy plains, the peaks remain silent, their secrets locked beneath snow and stone. No one knows for certain whether they are monuments or mountains, temples or tricks of nature. But one thing is clear: they challenge us to look again at the past, to question the stories we tell ourselves, and to wonder what lies hidden in the most remote corners of the earth. From ice-covered peaks to the world's first temple, the mystery deepens, and the journey into the unknown continues. Göbekli Tepe, the first temple or forgotten civilization, high on a hill in southeastern Turkey, buried beneath layers of earth for thousands of years, lies a site that has shaken the foundations of archaeology. Göbekli Tepe, often called the world's first temple, has been dated to around 12,000 years ago, long before the dawn of farming, cities, or organized religion. To stand at its ruins is to face a paradox that seems impossible. Hunter-gatherers. People, we are told, lived simple lives with primitive tools, somehow carved massive megaliths, decorated them with intricate reliefs, and arranged them in vast stone circles. How could such a feat have been accomplished by people who, according to mainstream history, should not have had the knowledge, the organization, or the technology to build anything of the kind? The sheer scale of Göbekli Tepe is mind-boggling. Some of its stone pillars weigh up to 20 tons, towering over those who uncovered them. They are arranged in circles, with larger central stones flanked by smaller ones, a design that suggests careful planning and symbolic meaning. Many of these pillars are carved with animals: lions, snakes, boars, vultures, even abstract symbols, etched with remarkable skill into solid rock. These are not crude scratches made with stone tools, but detailed reliefs that show artistry, intention, and astonishing precision. How could so-called primitive hunter-gatherers with no farming, no writing, and no wheels achieve such monumental construction? Mainstream archaeology has struggled to explain it. The accepted view is that Göbekli Tepe was a ritual center, built by early humans who gathered seasonally to create a sacred space. In this interpretation, the site marks a pivotal transition in human history, where religion and shared belief came first, sparking the development of agriculture and settled life. According to this theory, people were drawn together by a common purpose, and in the process of building temples, they learned to farm, stay in one place, and form communities. But does this explanation really capture the magnitude of what we see at Göbekli Tepe? The anomalies tell a different story. One of the most striking is that Göbekli Tepe was intentionally buried. Thousands of years after it was built, the site was covered with earth and stone, as if someone deliberately wanted to hide it from the world. Why would anyone go to such lengths to bury a temple that took generations to build? Was it to preserve it? To protect it? Or to conceal knowledge too dangerous to remain in plain sight? And who had the authority or the reason to make that decision? Then there are the carvings. Many researchers have noted that some of the symbols and animals appear to correspond with constellations in the night sky, suggesting that Göbekli Tepe was more than just a temple. It may have been an astronomical observatory. Some even argue that the carvings record a cosmic event, perhaps a comet strike, that altered the course of human history around 10900 BC, a date that coincides with the Younger Dryas, a sudden return to Ice Age conditions. Could it be that Göbekli Tepe was a place where survivors recorded the story of a global cataclysm, etched forever into stone? The site's intentional burial, advanced artistry, and possible celestial alignments challenge the idea that this was simply a ritual gathering of primitive people. Instead, they point to something far older, far more complex. Could Göbekli Tepe be evidence of a proto-civilization, an advanced culture that existed long before Mesopotamia, Egypt, or the Indus Valley? If so, then the entire narrative of human history must be rewritten. we would have to admit that civilization did not begin 5,000 years ago, but perhaps 12,000 years ago, or even earlier. The hypotheses are as varied as they are provocative. Some scholars remain firm. It was a ritual site built by hunter-gatherers, nothing more, albeit a remarkable one. Others suggest it was the work of a transitional people, a proto-civilization experimenting with architecture, astronomy, and religion long before the mainstream timeline allows. And then there are those who push further, suggesting Göbekli Tepe may be linked to legends of a lost world, perhaps even the survivors of Atlantis, who carried their knowledge to new lands after their homeland was destroyed. Could it be that Göbekli Tepe is not the beginning of civilization, but the remnant of one that came before, erased by cataclysm yet refusing to be forgotten? Skeptics argue against such bold ideas, pointing out that people are always more resourceful than we give them credit for, and that hunter-gatherers could have achieved far more than we assume. They remind us that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, and that just because we have not found farming tools or settlements near Göbekli Tepe does not mean they did not exist. But even they struggle with the intentional burial, the astronomical alignments, and the sheer leap of imagination required to explain how supposedly simple people built something so extraordinary. Göbekli Tepe challenges everything we thought we knew about human origins. Was it the spark that ignited civilization? Or the last flicker of a culture that had already reached great heights? Were its builders ordinary people inspired by shared faith? Or were they inheritors of knowledge from a forgotten age? The questions remain unanswered, but the stones continue to whisper secrets from the deep past. What is certain is that Göbekli Tepe does not fit neatly into the story we have been told. It sits like an anomaly, a puzzle piece from a different picture, daring us to question our assumptions and consider the possibility that our history is far older, far stranger, and far more mysterious than we ever imagined. But speaking of Atlantis, what about the city that vanished? Atlantis, myth, legend, or forgotten history? More than 2,000 years ago, the philosopher Plato told a story that would ignite imaginations for millennia. He wrote of a great city, a powerful civilization blessed with knowledge, wealth, and extraordinary engineering. Its temples shone with gold, its harbors overflowed with ships, and its armies stretched across the seas. Yet according to Plato, this magnificent city met its end in a single day and night of catastrophe, swallowed by the ocean, and lost forever. That city was Atlantis. But was Plato recounting history, or inventing an allegory to teach a lesson about human pride? Was Atlantis real, or is it nothing more than a myth? The paradox of Atlantis is as enduring as the legend itself. If the city never existed, then why do so many stories from so many cultures speak of lands destroyed by floods, of civilizations vanishing beneath the sea? And if it did exist, then where was it? Over the centuries, dozens of candidate locations have been proposed. Some point to the Mediterranean, Santorini, Crete, or southern Spain, while others look to the Caribbean, the Azores, or even Antarctica. From volcanic islands to submerged plains, each site seems to carry echoes of Plato's description, yet none match perfectly. Could it be that the legend of Atlantis is not about one place, but a memory preserved in many? Mainstream scholarship has long regarded Atlantis as pure fiction. In their view, Plato invented the story as an allegory, a warning against hubris and greed. Atlantis, they argue, was never meant to be taken literally, but symbolically, a perfect civilization that fell because of arrogance, a mirror held up to Athens itself. And yet the problem remains. Plato was unusually precise in his description. He gave detailed measurements of the city, its concentric canals, its fertile plains, and its great fleets. He even gave a date, saying Atlantis was destroyed around 9600 BC. Why would he choose such detail if the story was merely metaphor? Why risk ridicule by grounding an allegory in numbers and timelines? The anomalies surrounding Atlantis add fuel to the fire. In recent decades, underwater structures have been found that raise uncomfortable questions. Off the coast of Bimini in the Bahamas lies a formation known as the Bimini Road, a series of massive rectangular stones arranged like a pathway, which some believe could be remnants of an ancient city. Off the coast of India near Dwarka, underwater ruins have been dated to thousands of years before mainstream history allows. Even in the Mediterranean, sunken cities and megaliths hint at lost settlements drowned by rising seas. And then there is the greatest anomaly of all, the timing. Around 12,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, Earth experienced massive climate upheaval. Glaciers melted, seas rose by hundreds of feet, and coastlines were swallowed. Could Plato's date, dismissed for centuries, actually coincide with this real and devastating global event? The hypotheses surrounding Atlantis reflect the tension between myth and history. The most cautious view insists it is nothing more than allegory, a story invented by Plato to illustrate moral lessons. Others suggest it was a real city, perhaps on Crete, destroyed by the eruption of Thera, an event so catastrophic it could have inspired memories of a world-ending flood. But there are those who take Plato at his word, arguing that Atlantis was a powerful civilization that flourished during the Ice Age, only to be destroyed in the cataclysms that ended it. In this view, Atlantis was not a metaphor, but a memory, a story passed down from survivors, carried across cultures, until it reached Plato's ears. If Atlantis was real, what does that mean for our understanding of history? It would suggest that advanced societies existed long before the timeline we accept, that humanity has risen and fallen more than once. It would mean that the myths of floods and lost lands are not coincidences, but shared memories of a disaster so immense it scarred the collective memory of our species. And if that is true, then the story of Atlantis is not just about the past, it is a warning for the present. Civilizations rise, civilizations fall, and the ocean waits patiently. The legend of Atlantis endures because it touches something deep within us. We dream of lost golden ages, of knowledge forgotten, of cities swallowed by the sea. We fear catastrophe, but we are fascinated by it too. Was Atlantis a story? Was it a place? Or was it both? A myth built on a kernel of truth, a memory dressed in allegory? We may never know for certain, but the questions remain, echoing across centuries. If lines of legend point to truth, what about lines carved in the desert? The Nazca lines, messages to the gods. Across the barren desert plains of southern Peru, etched into the earth itself, lies one of the world's most enduring mysteries. Stretching for hundreds of square kilometers, the Nazca lines are giant geoglyphs, shapes carved into the ground so vast that their full designs can only be seen from the air. From above, they reveal enormous figures of animals, birds, plants, and even strange humanoid shapes. There are monkeys with coiled tails, spiders with impossibly precise proportions, hummingbirds with wings spread wide, and geometric lines running in perfect symmetry for kilometers. To walk among them is to see little more than shallow grooves in the soil. But from the sky they transform into a breathtaking display of ancient artistry. And here lies the paradox. How did a civilization without planes, balloons, or satellites create artwork that only makes sense from above? The Nazca lines were created between 500 BC and 500 AD by the Nazca culture, a people who thrived in one of the harshest desert climates on Earth. Mainstream archaeology explains them as ritual pathways, symbolic offerings to the gods above, particularly deities linked to water and fertility. After all, in the dry Nazca desert, survival depended on rain, and rain depended on divine favor. Walking the lines, making offerings, and creating sacred shapes may have been acts of devotion, prayers carved directly into the earth. But does this explanation fully account for the sheer scale and precision of the lines? Could religious ritual alone explain how thousands of figures were planned, laid out, and maintained for centuries? Because the anomalies are impossible to ignore. Many of the lines stretch for kilometers, perfectly straight, crossing hills and valleys with an accuracy that would challenge even modern engineers. Others form complex geometric patterns, trapezoids, spirals, intersecting lines, that look more like runways than ritual pathways. The animal figures themselves are enormous, some stretching over 1,000 feet, yet their proportions remain strikingly accurate. How could the Nazca people, working only from the ground, achieve such perfection without an aerial perspective? Did they possess surveying techniques far beyond what we imagine, or were they guided by knowledge we have long forgotten? Some researchers have suggested that the lines form an astronomical calendar, aligning with solstices, equinoxes, or specific star constellations. In this view, the Nazca lines were not just art but science, tools for tracking the heavens and predicting seasonal cycles. Others see them as ceremonial spaces, vast open-air temples where priests and pilgrims enacted rituals visible to the gods. And then there are the more radical hypotheses, ideas that push beyond the boundaries of mainstream thought. Could the lines have been intended as landing strips for otherworldly visitors? The shapes are so immense, so unmistakable from above, that some argue they were messages or even markers for beings watching from the sky. Aliens, in this interpretation, are not a fanciful distraction, but the only explanation for a civilization carving messages so enormous they could never see them themselves. Far-fetched? Perhaps, but the very scale of the Nazca lines makes it difficult to dismiss the question entirely. Skeptics point out that the Nazca could have used simple methods, stakes, ropes, and careful planning to create large designs without needing to see them from above. Indeed, experiments in modern times have shown it is possible to recreate giant figures on the ground with nothing more than basic tools. But does this account for the sheer number of figures, the precision of their lines, and the consistency across centuries? Why devote so much effort in a region where survival was already so difficult? To art that no human could fully appreciate from the ground? Why cover the desert floor with hundreds of figures visible only to the gods or to something else? The truth may lie somewhere between devotion and mystery. The Nazca lines could have been offerings, prayers etched into the earth, messages meant not for human eyes but for divine ones. They could also have served as markers, calendars, or ritual maps, guiding ceremonies across the desert. Yet their enduring mystery lies not only in how they were made, but in why they were made at such an impossible scale. Did the Nazca simply want to honor their gods in the grandest way possible? Or did they inherit knowledge from an older, forgotten source? Could these lines be echoes of an ancient science preserved in ritual form, their meaning lost to time? As planes first flew over the region in the 20th century and revealed the figures in their full splendor, the world was stunned. For centuries, the lines had been hidden in plain sight, their designs invisible to those who walked among them. Today, we marvel at them as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, yet we remain no closer to unraveling their purpose. Were they art, prayer, science, or something altogether stranger? The Nazca lines stand as one of humanity's most enigmatic legacies, a reminder that the desert itself can hold secrets too vast to comprehend. They challenge our understanding of what ancient people could achieve, and they invite us to wonder whether the answers lie not in the ground, but in the sky. If desert floors hold secrets, what about mountain stones too heavy to move? Baalbek megaliths, impossible stones. In the ancient city of Baalbek in modern-day Lebanon lies a site that has fascinated archaeologists and engineers for generations. Towering columns and sprawling ruins tell the story of a grand Roman temple complex, once dedicated to Jupiter, Venus, and Bacchus. Yet what captures attention even more than the temples are the stones that form their foundation, blocks of such size and weight that they dwarf anything used in Egypt or Greece. Here, the builders left behind monuments of engineering that seem to push the limits of what ancient technology could achieve. The paradox emerges when we look at the stone of the pregnant woman, a massive block lying partly buried in the quarry just outside Baalbek. It weighs more than 1,000 tons, and nearby another unfinished stone has been estimated at nearly 1,600 tons. To put this in perspective, the largest stones used in the Great Pyramid of Giza weigh around 80 tons. How could ancient builders lacking modern cranes or machinery cut, transport, and position stones of such staggering size? Even today, moving a block of this weight would require specialized equipment and careful planning. The mystery of how it was done in antiquity remains unsolved. Mainstream archaeology attributes Baalbek's grandeur to the Romans, who built a massive temple platform here during the 1st century AD. Their skill in construction is undeniable. The surviving columns of the Temple of Jupiter still rise 20 meters into the air, testifying to Roman ambition and engineering. But beneath the Roman remains lies another puzzle. The base platform, the so-called trilithon, consists of 3 enormous stone blocks, each weighing around 800 tons, precisely cut and fitted together with extraordinary accuracy. These foundation stones predate the Roman additions, suggesting the site was already in use long before the empire arrived. If the Romans did not place these blocks, then who did and how? The anomalies are striking. The stones show almost seamless joins, as if the builders possessed techniques to move and align them with exact precision. The size and weight of the blocks raise questions about logistics. How were they quarried? How were they transported the half-kilometer from the quarry to the site? And how were they lifted into place? No written records survive to explain the methods. Instead, the stones remain silent, challenging assumptions about the limits of ancient engineering. Hypotheses vary. Some scholars hold that the Romans were indeed capable of such feats, relying on ramps, pulleys, and sheer manpower to maneuver the stones. Others suggest that the Romans built atop an older foundation, reusing a platform constructed by a previous civilization whose techniques have been lost to history. A more speculative view proposes that advanced knowledge or technology, forgotten over time, once allowed ancient builders to manipulate stone on a scale far beyond what we credit them for today. Which of these explanations is correct remains uncertain, but each possibility reshapes our view of what ancient people could accomplish. At Baalbek, history and mystery converge in stone. The ruins stand as testimony to human ambition, but also as questions carved into the earth. Were the Romans building on borrowed ground? Did they inherit the legacy of an older culture whose name is lost to time? And what tools, what knowledge made it possible to shape and place blocks heavier than anything else in the ancient world? And if stones can defy explanation, what about machines centuries ahead of their time? The Antikythera mechanism, the ancient computer that shouldn't exist. At the bottom of the Aegean Sea, hidden for nearly 2,000 years, a fragment of corroded bronze was discovered that would rewrite our understanding of ancient science. Known today as the Antikythera mechanism, it has been called the world's first computer, a device so intricate, so advanced, that it seems entirely out of place in the timeline of human history. When it was first found, it looked like nothing more than a lump of metal fused with rock, yet within it lay a level of mechanical genius no one expected from the ancient world. What was this object? Who built it? And how could such sophisticated technology exist more than a millennium before the invention of similar devices? The story begins in 1900, when sponge divers off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera stumbled upon the wreck of a Roman-era ship. Among statues, amphorae, and everyday objects, they recovered a strange, corroded fragment of bronze. At first, it was dismissed as debris, but in 1902, archaeologist Valerio Stice noticed something remarkable. Embedded in the corroded mass were gears, precisely cut, interlocking gears. The discovery baffled scholars. Complex gear mechanisms were unknown in the ancient world, and nothing remotely comparable was thought to have existed until the medieval period. How could this be explained? The device, now fragmented into dozens of pieces, revealed its secrets slowly. Over the decades, scholars studied its corroded surfaces, but it was not until the late 20th and early 21st centuries that advances in imaging technology allowed researchers to peer inside without damaging it. What they found was astonishing. The mechanism contained at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, arranged in a compact structure, with dials and inscriptions that once covered its surface. When operated by a hand crank, it could track the cycles of the sun and the moon, predict eclipses, model the movements of planets, and perhaps even calculate the timing of ancient Olympic games. This was not a simple calendar. It was a mechanical cosmos in a box. Mainstream historians classify the Antikythera mechanism as an astronomical calculator, built around the 2nd century BC, likely by Greek craftsmen familiar with the work of Hipparchus or Archimedes. In this view, it was a product of the Hellenistic period, an age of remarkable scientific inquiry. After all, Greek mathematicians understood geometry, astronomy, and the principles of mechanical devices such as water clocks and automata. But even with this context, the mechanism stands apart. Nothing else like it has ever been found from the period. Its precision is extraordinary. Some of the gears are cut with teeth only a millimeter wide, meshing together in perfect sequence. If this was truly made in the 2nd century BC, then it predates comparable mechanisms by over 1,000 years. How could such advanced technology appear, then vanish, leaving no trace in the archaeological record? The anomalies only deepen with closer study. The mechanism incorporates knowledge of astronomical cycles that would not be rediscovered until centuries later. The Metonic cycle, the Saros cycle of eclipses, even the subtle variations in the moon's motion caused by its elliptical orbit, all of these were built into the device. One dial even predicts lunar and solar eclipses with remarkable accuracy, complete with notations for whether they would occur in the day or night. How could ancient craftsmen working with bronze and rudimentary tools encode such sophisticated astronomical knowledge into gears and wheels? Did they possess insights that have since been lost? Or was this the work of a small group of geniuses whose achievements were never widely known? Then there is the craftsmanship itself. Creating gears of such precision requires not just knowledge, but advanced tools for cutting and shaping. Yet no evidence of similar devices, no workshops or intermediate stages of development have ever been found. The Antikythera mechanism appears fully formed, as if it emerged suddenly without predecessors. In the history of technology, innovations usually build gradually, from simple to complex, from crude to refined. But here we see the opposite. A device of astonishing sophistication appears only to vanish with no surviving tradition to carry it forward. Why hypotheses abound. The conservative view holds that the Antikythera mechanism was the pinnacle of Greek mechanical knowledge, the work of a brilliant individual or small school. Perhaps Archimedes, who was said to have built mechanical models of the heavens, created it, or perhaps it was the product of workshops inspired by his genius. In this view, the mechanism was rare, expensive, and fragile, and so few were made that none survived the centuries. When the Roman world shifted away from scientific inquiry toward empire and war, the knowledge was lost, leaving only legends. Another hypothesis suggests that the mechanism was not unique, but part of a broader tradition of ancient engineering that has simply vanished. Could there have been other devices, perhaps simpler versions that decayed or were melted down for metal long ago? If so, then our archaeological record is incomplete, and the Antikythera mechanism is just the lone survivor of a forgotten lineage of machines. What else might have existed hidden now beneath the sands or the seas? And then there are the more speculative ideas. Some argue that the mechanism is evidence of knowledge passed down from an earlier, lost civilization, one that thrived before recorded history. Could survivors of such a culture have carried their secrets into the Hellenistic world, where they were briefly revived before disappearing again? Others suggest that the Greeks achieved more than we give them credit for, reaching technological heights that rivaled the modern age in miniature, only to have it all erased by time, war, and collapse. Could the Antikythera mechanism be a fragment of a much larger story, one in which human progress has not been a steady climb, but a series of rises and falls? Skeptics remind us that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. One device, no matter how complex, does not prove a forgotten civilization or lost technology. They argue that Greek ingenuity, combined with mathematical knowledge and craftsmanship, is sufficient to explain the mechanism. And yet even these scholars admit that the device is extraordinary. Why has nothing like it been found from before or after? Why does the mechanism stand alone? A singular marvel without context. The Antikythera mechanism continues to inspire research, debate, and fascination. Modern reconstructions have shown that it worked with stunning accuracy, capable of modeling the heavens with a beauty that rivals modern orreries. It has also sparked a deeper question. What else might lie hidden in the depths of the seas waiting to be found? The Antikythera shipwreck itself still holds secrets, with new dives continuing to uncover artifacts. Could there be other mechanisms, other fragments of lost knowledge, scattered across the Mediterranean? In the end, the Antikythera mechanism is more than a machine. It is a reminder of how fragile history can be, how easily knowledge can be gained then lost. It challenges us to question the neat story of progress, the assumption that humanity has advanced steadily and linearly from primitive beginnings to modern brilliance. Instead, it suggests another possibility, that flashes of genius have appeared throughout history, sometimes preserved, sometimes forgotten, always fragile in the face of time. The device remains in pieces, corroded yet enduring, a puzzle that refuses to be solved completely. Was it a lone masterpiece or the last survivor of a vanished tradition? Was it an invention of Greek brilliance or a relic of knowledge carried from a forgotten world? The answers remain hidden, turning slowly, like the gears of the mechanism itself hinting at truths just beyond our reach. And if stones can defy explanation, what about machines centuries ahead of their time? Centuries ahead of their time. The lost labyrinth of Egypt, a monument greater than the pyramids? In the sands of Egypt, long overshadowed by the towering pyramids of Giza, lies the memory of another monument, one that ancient authors claimed was even greater, more complex, and more awe-inspiring than anything built by the pharaohs. They called it the Labyrinth of Egypt, a vast structure said to contain thousands of chambers, endless corridors, and hidden secrets. For centuries, travelers and historians repeated tales of its grandeur, insisting it rivaled the pyramids in scale and importance. Yet today little trace remains of this legendary complex. Did it truly exist, or was it an exaggeration born of myth and imagination? And if it did exist, what secrets might still lie buried beneath the sands? The story of the Egyptian labyrinth comes primarily from ancient historians. The Greek traveler Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BC, described visiting a structure near Lake Moeris in the Fayum region of Egypt. He claimed it was a marvel surpassing even the pyramids. According to him, the labyrinth contained 12 great courts, 3,000 rooms, and an intricate system of passages so complex that even he, with guides, could barely comprehend it. Herodotus marveled at the scale, the craftsmanship, and the overwhelming sense of grandeur. Other authors, such as Strabo and Pliny the Elder, also recorded accounts of this mysterious monument, repeating similar descriptions of an immense complex of halls, chambers, and underground passages. What makes these accounts intriguing is their consistency. Writers from different times and backgrounds all described the labyrinth as a real place, not as allegory or legend. They spoke of colonnades, walls covered with carvings, and subterranean halls where, according to some, the tombs of kings and sacred crocodiles were kept. If these writers exaggerated, then they did so in remarkably similar ways. Could they all have been describing the same structure, one that has since vanished? Or did they fall victim to repeating a story that had already grown larger than life? Mainstream archaeology has long debated the existence of the labyrinth. Many scholars believe that Herodotus visited a real building, likely a large temple complex near Hawara, commissioned by Pharaoh Amenemhat III during the 12th dynasty, around 1800 BC. According to this interpretation, the labyrinth was not a literal maze but a grand mortuary temple, filled with chambers, courts, and decorated walls. Over time, erosion, looting, and the reuse of stones reduced the once great monument to ruins, leaving little for modern archaeologists to examine. In this view, the labyrinth was real, but perhaps not quite as vast or extraordinary as the ancient writers claimed. Yet anomalies remain. Despite repeated descriptions from classical sources, little archaeological evidence has been uncovered to match their accounts. Early explorers in the 19th and 20th centuries searched for the labyrinth near Hawara, uncovering foundations and fragments, but nothing on the scale described by Herodotus. Later surveys using ground-penetrating radar suggested the presence of subsurface structures, vast stone foundations hidden beneath the sands. But full-scale excavations have been limited, and results remain inconclusive. If the labyrinth truly contained thousands of rooms, where are they now? Were they dismantled, destroyed, or still waiting beneath the desert? One of the greatest puzzles is the claim that the labyrinth contained underground chambers. Herodotus specifically mentioned a subterranean level, accessible only to priests and royalty, where tombs and sacred relics were hidden. If true, then much of the labyrinth could remain buried unseen by modern eyes. The Egyptian desert has concealed countless treasures over millennia. Could the labyrinth still lie hidden, its underground halls untouched, waiting for rediscovery? Hypotheses about the labyrinth's nature vary widely. The cautious view holds that it was indeed Amenemhat III's mortuary temple, impressive but not mythical, and that classical writers exaggerated its size and complexity. Others argue that the labyrinth may have been a combination of temple, administrative center, and funerary monument, explaining why ancient visitors found it so overwhelming. But more speculative theories suggest something deeper. Could the labyrinth have been a repository of knowledge, a library of stone where the wisdom of ancient Egypt was preserved? Some have even proposed that it housed records of a forgotten chapter of human history, perhaps connected to earlier, lost civilizations. The possibility of hidden chambers fuels this speculation. If vast underground halls exist as described, then what might they contain? Could they hold inscriptions, artifacts, or even entire archives of Egypt's forgotten past? It is tempting to imagine corridors lined with hieroglyphs, chambers filled with relics, or perhaps secrets deliberately hidden away to survive the ages. But until excavations confirm or deny these possibilities, the labyrinth remains a riddle. Skeptics caution against too much speculation. They point out that ancient authors often embellish their accounts, and that the grandeur of the labyrinth may have been exaggerated by awestruck visitors. They also note that Egypt is filled with ruined temples and monuments, many of which seemed larger and more mysterious in antiquity than they appear today. Perhaps the labyrinth was impressive but not miraculous. Perhaps it was real but not greater than the pyramids. Yet even skeptics admit that the consistency of ancient reports makes it hard to dismiss entirely. Why would so many writers insist on its scale if there was not at least some truth to it? Modern technology offers hope for answers. Remote sensing, radar surveys, and satellite imagery provide tools that could reveal hidden foundations without disturbing the ground. Early surveys at Hawara have already suggested the presence of buried stone structures, raising the tantalizing possibility that the labyrinth, or parts of it, may still survive beneath layers of sand and silt. Further exploration may one day confirm what Herodotus and others claim to see, or it may finally put the legend to rest. Until then, the labyrinth hovers in the realm between history and myth, a monument described in detail yet missing from our eyes. The lost labyrinth of Egypt forces us to reconsider how much of antiquity we truly know. Was it a simple mortuary temple later exaggerated by foreign visitors? Was it a sprawling complex that has since been erased by time? Or was it something more? A monument deliberately hidden, its secrets waiting for the right moment to be revealed. The answers remain uncertain, but the questions keep the mystery alive. What makes the labyrinth so compelling is the idea that something greater than the pyramids could be lying in plain sight, forgotten beneath the sands. The pyramids themselves have endured as eternal symbols of Egypt, yet the labyrinth, once celebrated as their equal or superior, has all but vanished. Did the ancients conceal it deliberately? Did natural forces erase it? Or has modern archaeology simply not yet looked deep enough? Each possibility carries weight, and each keeps alive the intrigue of a structure that could change our understanding of Egyptian history. In the end, the labyrinth is both a monument and a metaphor. It represents not only a physical structure, but also the maze of history itself, full of passages, dead ends, and hidden chambers of knowledge. To pursue the truth about the labyrinth is to step into a puzzle of our own, one where evidence is scarce, and the lines between myth and reality blur. The sands of Egypt have given us pyramids, temples, and tombs, but they have also kept their secrets. Perhaps beneath those sands, the labyrinth still waits. And if so, then one of the greatest monuments ever described is not lost, but merely hidden, preserved for a future discovery that could reshape our view of the ancient world. And if a labyrinth greater than the pyramids can be forgotten, what about a city said to be older than time itself? The forgotten civilization of Tiwanaku, a city older than time. High on the windswept plains of Bolivia, near the shores of Lake Titicaca, stand the ruins of a city that have puzzled explorers, archaeologists, and historians for centuries. Known as Tiwanaku or Tiwanaku, this site is often regarded as the cradle of Andean civilization, a place where monumental architecture, complex social organization, and advanced craftsmanship first flourished in the highlands of South America. Yet beneath the official story lies a deeper mystery. The ruins appear to carry signs of immense antiquity, feats of construction that defy simple explanation, and questions that challenge our understanding of when civilization truly began in the Americas. Could Tiwanaku be far older than mainstream history allows? Perhaps even a city older than time itself? Archaeologists recognize Tiwanaku as the center of a culture that flourished between roughly 500 and 1000 AD, exerting influence across the Andes before eventually collapsing. Its monumental structures, the Akapana Pyramid, the Kalasasaya Temple, and the iconic Gateway of the Sun, testify to the city's importance as both a political and religious center. At its peak, tens of thousands of people may have lived here, making it one of the great urban centers of pre-Columbian South America. Yet the ruins are not simply impressive in scale, they are extraordinary in detail. The precision of the stonework, the alignment of the monuments, and the sense of deliberate design have led many to suspect that the city's origins stretch much deeper into antiquity than the accepted timelines suggest. The site was first brought to international attention during the Spanish conquest of South America. Chroniclers described enormous stones and strange monuments already in ruins, leading them to believe Tiwanaku had been abandoned long before their arrival. In the 19th century, explorers and antiquarians visited the site, marveling at its megalithic remains. Some claimed it must be thousands of years old, perhaps predating even the Inca, who themselves regarded Tiwanaku as a sacred ancestral place. But as archaeology developed, the conventional view settled on a later date, placing the flourishing of Tiwanaku in the first millennium AD. Even so, the debates never stopped, fueled by anomalies that refused to fit neatly into the accepted framework. One of the most striking features of Tiwanaku is its stonework. At Pumapunku, a section of the site often treated as separate yet closely linked blocks of andesite and red sandstone weighing up to 100 tons are scattered across the plateau. Some are cut with astonishing precision, featuring interlocking shapes and smooth surfaces that look almost as though they were machined. The famous H blocks, with their complex notches and grooves, appear designed to fit together like pieces of a puzzle. How could a pre-industrial society without steel tools or the wheel achieve such accuracy? Mainstream archaeologists argue that skilled stonemasons using hammerstones, chisels, and abrasives could produce these results with enough time and effort. But the scale and consistency of the work continue to inspire questions. Could the builders of Tiwanaku have possessed techniques or technologies that are now lost to history? Another anomaly lies in the city's apparent alignment with celestial events. The Kalasasaya Temple, with its standing stones, has been interpreted as a solar observatory, marking solstices and equinoxes with remarkable precision. Early investigators, noting discrepancies in alignment, suggested that the temple was oriented to the sky as it appeared thousands of years earlier. If true, this would push the construction of Tiwanaku back to 15,000 BC or earlier, far beyond the conventional timeline for urban civilization. Most archaeologists caution against such extreme conclusions, attributing the discrepancies to later reconstructions or measurement errors. Yet the idea persists that Tiwanaku may encode astronomical knowledge from a much earlier epoch, hinting at a legacy older than the city itself. The mystery deepens with myths and legends surrounding the site. According to local tradition, Tiwanaku was the place where the god Viracocha, the great creator deity, emerged to bring order to the world after a cataclysmic flood. From here he set humanity on its path, teaching arts, agriculture, and governance before vanishing across the seas. The myth paints Tiwanaku not simply as a city, but as a sacred place of beginnings, tied to cycles of destruction and rebirth. Could the mythology encode memories of real events? Perhaps a flood at the end of the last ice age, when rising waters transformed landscapes across the globe? If so, then the ruins of Tiwanaku may stand on foundations far older than the visible structures suggest. Mainstream archaeology maintains a more conservative stance. Radiocarbon dating of organic material found at the site supports an occupation beginning around 500 BC, with monumental construction flourishing after 500 AD. In this framework, Tiwanaku is the product of Andean innovation, a precursor to the Inca but not a relic of extreme antiquity. The precision stonework, they argue, reflects the skill and dedication of Andean craftsmen, who mastered techniques of quarrying, transporting, and fitting stone without advanced tools. The astronomical alignments, meanwhile, may reflect practical observation of the sun and stars, refined over generations but not evidence of an Ice Age civilization. From this perspective, Tiwanaku is extraordinary, but not inexplicable. And yet, the anomalies remain difficult to dismiss entirely. The sheer size of the blocks at Pumapunku challenges explanations of transport, especially given the absence of wheeled vehicles or draft animals capable of pulling such loads in the Andes. The interlocking precision of the H block suggests more than trial and error. The myths of Viracocha, tied to floods and cycles of renewal, resonate with global traditions of cataclysm and rebirth. Could it be that the builders of Tiwanaku were inheritors of knowledge from an earlier people, one that survived upheaval and left its mark on the high plains of Bolivia? Hypotheses about Tiwanaku's true origins vary. Some accept the mainstream view, seeing it as the natural culmination of Andean cultural development. Others argue that the city's foundations are much older, perhaps tens of thousands of years, with later cultures rebuilding and expanding upon ancient ruins. A more speculative perspective links Tiwanaku to global patterns of megalithic construction, suggesting a shared heritage of lost technology or knowledge passed across continents in a forgotten age. Could Tiwanaku be part of a global network of ancient sites, each echoing the achievements of a civilization erased from history? The unanswered questions give the site its aura of suspense. Why are the most precise and massive blocks found in the oldest sections of the ruins rather than the later additions? Why do local myths describe gods teaching civilization after a flood? Themes mirrored in cultures as distant as Mesopotamia and Mesoamerica. Why does the site continue to inspire interpretations that stretch far beyond conventional archaeology? Each question pulls us deeper into the labyrinth of possibilities, where history and myth blur and certainty slips away. What makes Tiwanaku so compelling is not simply its stones, but its silence. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, it left no written records, no text to explain its builders' intentions. Instead, it speaks through architecture, alignment, and legend, inviting interpretation but never giving final answers. This silence fuels both scholarly debate and popular imagination, leaving the city suspended between the known and the unknown. In the end, Tiwanaku is a reminder that history is not a straight line of progress, but a landscape of peaks and valleys, with moments of brilliance that rise, fall, and sometimes vanish. Whether it was built entirely within the last 2 millennia, or whether its roots extend into a forgotten age, the city commands respect as a place of ingenuity, faith, and enduring mystery. It challenges us to look beyond assumptions, to recognize that the past is more complex than neat timelines suggest, and to remain open to the possibility that great achievements can be lost, only to be rediscovered in fragments of stone. The ruins of Tiwanaku stand exposed to wind and sky, battered yet enduring, silent yet eloquent. They tell us that civilizations rise, that they leave their mark, and that time erases much but not all. Perhaps the truth of Tiwanaku's origins lies buried still, waiting for discovery. Or perhaps its greatest lesson is that history itself is a puzzle, one whose pieces will never quite fit. And if a forgotten city can endure on the high plains, what other secrets might lie hidden in the waters of the Pacific? The enigma of Nan Madol, the lost city of the Pacific? In the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, on the island of Pohnpei in Micronesia, lies a city unlike any other. Built on a coral reef and connected by a network of canals, Nan Madol has been called the Venice of the Pacific. Yet its origins, its purpose, and the methods used in its construction remain shrouded in mystery. The site consists of more than 90 artificial islets created from basalt and coral and covered with massive stone structures. From the moment European explorers first laid eyes on it, Nan Madol has puzzled the world. How did an island society, with no known access to advanced technology or large draft animals, construct such a place, moving blocks of stone weighing many tons across water and marsh? What drove them to build this city upon the sea? And why, after centuries of occupation, was it abandoned? The story of Nan Madol begins in local legend, long before the arrival of Western scholars. According to Pohnpeian tradition, the city was founded by 2 brothers, Olosopa and Olosipa, who came from across the sea. These brothers, said to possess great magical powers, ordered the stones to fly into place, guided by chants and rituals. Over time, the city grew into a political and ceremonial center, home to the Sodelur dynasty, rulers who established centralized authority over the island. Yet while legend explains the construction through supernatural means, archaeologists face a more grounded puzzle. How could a society without cranes, pulleys, or beasts of burden transport and position such immense basalt columns? The architecture of Nan Madol is both imposing and unique. The builders relied on prismatic basalt columns, naturally occurring volcanic formations that break into hexagonal shapes. These columns were stacked in a crisscross pattern, resembling the structure of a log cabin but built from stone. Some individual pieces weigh up to 50 tons. The walls rise several meters above the sea, enclosing courtyards and platforms that once supported wooden structures. The islets themselves were created by filling coral foundations with basalt and sand, then enclosing them with stone walls. Canals between the islets allowed canoes to move freely, earning the site its nickname as a waterborne city. But the scale of the effort is staggering. Thousands of tons of basalt were quarried, transported, and precisely positioned in an environment where logistics alone should have been overwhelming. Mainstream archaeology dates Nan Madol's construction to around the 12th century AD, with earlier phases perhaps beginning as far back as the 8th or 9th century. In this interpretation, the city was the ceremonial and political center of the Sodelur dynasty, a place where elites ruled, conducted rituals, and maintained control over the island's population. The islets served as residences for nobles, priests, and attendants, while the common people lived outside the city and supported it through labor and tribute. Nan Madol, in this view, was both palace and temple, a physical manifestation of power built upon the water to symbolize separation between rulers and ruled. Yet even within this framework, questions remain about how the construction was achieved and why the site was eventually abandoned. The anomalies of Nan Madol begin with logistics. The basalt used in its construction had to be quarried from distant sites on Pohnpei, some located several kilometers inland. Moving columns of stone weighing tens of tons across dense jungle and marsh, then floating them to offshore islets, seems almost impossible without advanced tools or methods. Experimental archaeology has shown that small basalt pieces can be moved with ropes, rafts, and manpower, but scaling this up to 50-ton blocks remains problematic. Did the builders possess techniques we no longer understand, or did they focus their efforts on a smaller number of massive stones, while relying on smaller pieces for most of the construction? Another anomaly lies in the sheer ambition of the project. Nan Madol was not built on solid ground but on a reef. To create more than 90 islets, the builders had to construct artificial foundations, then raise massive walls to enclose them. Why would a society undertake such a monumental task in such a challenging environment? Some scholars argue that the location was strategic, allowing the rulers to separate themselves from their subjects and to monitor movement by restricting access through canals. Others suggest religious symbolism, with the city upon the sea representing a cosmic order, an echo of myths about creation and divine authority. Yet the choice still raises questions. Why here and why on such a scale? Local legends add layers of mystery. The Sodelur dynasty is remembered in Pohnpeian tradition as foreign rulers, authoritarian and often cruel, who eventually lost power when the people rebelled. Their origin stories tied to the sea and to magical powers blur the line between myth and memory. Could these tales preserve echoes of migration or contact from distant cultures? Some researchers have speculated that Nan Madol was part of a wider network of Pacific voyaging, a node in a system of trade, exchange, and cultural diffusion. If so, then the city may represent not an isolated achievement, but a link in the story of human movement across the ocean. Speculative hypotheses push even further. Some have proposed that Nan Madol is a remnant of a much older civilization, perhaps dating back to a time before rising seas submerged ancient coastal settlements. Could the city be connected to global legends of lost lands like Lemuria or Mu? While mainstream archaeology places Nan Madol firmly in the late first millennium, the absence of definitive records leaves space for speculation. The sheer uniqueness of the site, stone log cabins on a coral reef, invites comparisons to other megalithic mysteries, from Easter Island to the ruins of Tiwanaku. Is it possible that Nan Madol represents a parallel tradition of monumental building, one that arose independently yet resonates with themes found across the ancient world? What is certain is that Nan Madol was eventually abandoned. By the 16th century, the site was in decline, and by the time Europeans arrived in the 17th century, it was already deserted. Reasons for this abandonment remain unclear. Some suggest that the centralized Sodelur dynasty collapsed due to internal conflict, rebellion, or external invasion. Others point to environmental pressures. Building on coral foundations may have made the city vulnerable to erosion, rising seas, or limited resources. If the logistics of sustaining such a complex became overwhelming, the population may have shifted back to the mainland, leaving the once great city to decay. The unanswered questions make Nan Madol an enduring enigma. How did the builders transport and position stones of such size and weight? Why did they choose to construct a city on water when easier sites existed nearby? What role did it play in the broader Pacific world? Was it a ceremonial capital, a center of trade, or something more? And perhaps most intriguing of all, are we seeing the full story, or is Nan Madol only a fragment of a much larger narrative, one that has been lost to time? Modern archaeology continues to study the site, using tools like remote sensing and underwater surveys to map its layout and foundations. These efforts reveal the immense planning and coordination required to build the city, emphasizing the organizational capabilities of the Sodelur state. Yet even as data accumulates, the sense of mystery remains. Nan Madol resists easy categorization, straddling the line between practical and symbolic, monumental and enigmatic. Ultimately, Nan Madol is both history and puzzle. It reminds us that human ingenuity is not confined to the well-known centers of civilization, but flourished in unexpected places, even on small islands in the Pacific. It shows us that monumental architecture was not solely the domain of Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Mesoamerica, but also of Micronesia, where stone and sea combined to create something unique. And it challenges us to look beyond assumptions, to see the Pacific not as a void, but as a stage for innovation, connection, and mystery. The basalt walls of Nan Madol still stand, silent against the waves, a city abandoned yet enduring. They tell us of rulers who sought power, of myths that shaped memory, and of questions that remain unanswered. Was Nan Madol simply a ceremonial capital? Or was it part of something far older, something forgotten beneath the tides of history? The truth remains hidden, locked within the canals and stones of the city upon the sea. And if the Pacific can guard a lost city, what secrets might still lie carved into the rock of a Mediterranean island? The rock of a Mediterranean island. The cart ruts of Malta. Tracks to nowhere across the rocky islands of Malta and Gozo, carved into the limestone bedrock, lie thousands of mysterious parallel grooves. Known as the cart ruts, they crisscross the landscape, sometimes forming neat patterns, sometimes diverging, intersecting, or running into the sea. At first glance, they appear simple, yet the more closely they are studied, the more perplexing they become. These grooves are consistent in spacing, resembling tracks left by wheels, yet no evidence of wheeled vehicles has ever been found from the time they were created. Some tracks lead nowhere, ending abruptly at cliff edges, while others vanish beneath the waves as if once part of a landscape now submerged. What were these ruts? Who carved them? And why do they remain one of Malta's most enduring enigmas? The cart ruts of Malta were first recorded in detail during the 19th century, when scholars began mapping the island's archaeological features. Since then, thousands of examples have been identified, with the densest concentrations found at sites like Clapham Junction, Misra Gar el Kabir, and San Juan. The grooves vary in depth, from shallow scratches to cuts over half a meter deep, but their gauge, the distance between the parallel tracks, remains remarkably consistent, averaging about 1.4 meters. This consistency suggests a standardized system, as if designed for a specific type of vehicle or tool. Yet the origins of the ruts remain obscure. Were they truly made by carts or by something else entirely? Mainstream archaeology tends to favor practical explanations. The most common view is that the ruts were created by wooden sledges or carts dragged across the soft limestone bedrock. Over time, repeated use would have worn deep grooves into the stone. In this interpretation, the ruts are evidence of a prehistoric transport network, used to move heavy goods such as stone blocks, agricultural produce, or water containers. The consistent gauge could reflect the standardized width of sledges, while the depth of some ruts indicates centuries of use. If this is correct, then the cart ruts of Malta may represent one of the oldest road systems in the world, built long before the Roman highways that defined later eras. Yet anomalies quickly arise. If the ruts were transport tracks, why do so many run into the sea? Some extend hundreds of meters into the water, visible beneath the surface as if carved before sea levels rose thousands of years ago. If this is the case, then the ruts would date back to the end of the last ice age, at least 10,000 years ago, far older than mainstream estimates, which place them in the Bronze Age, around 2000 BC. Others lead directly to cliff edges where no path forward exists. Were these ruts created when the terrain was different? Or did they serve some purpose we do not yet understand? The problem extends further. Despite their resemblance to wheel tracks, no evidence exists of wheeled vehicles in Malta during the period when the ruts are thought to have been made. Archaeological remains from the islands show no signs of carts, wagons, or wheels capable of producing such grooves. If sledges were used instead, why would they wear grooves of such precision and depth, rather than more irregular marks? And if wooden runners carved into limestone, why do some grooves appear perfectly smooth, as though cut intentionally rather than eroded by use? These contradictions fuel debate, keeping the mystery alive. Hypotheses abound. The conservative view holds that the ruts were indeed the result of practical transport, perhaps using sledges drawn by humans or animals. The anomalies, such as tracks leading into the sea, are explained by geological shifts, coastal erosion, or rising sea levels over thousands of years. In this framework, the cart ruts are not enigmatic at all, but simply the remnants of everyday labor, magnified by time and erosion into something extraordinary. But alternative interpretations suggest more. Some researchers propose that the ruts were ceremonial or ritual in purpose, pathways carved deliberately into the rock for religious processions or symbolic journeys. In this view, the ruts were not functional roads but sacred lines imbued with meaning. Others see them as part of an advanced system of irrigation or water transport, channels designed to guide water across the rocky landscape. While this interpretation explains some features, the depth and parallel nature of the grooves remain difficult to reconcile. More speculative theories suggest connections to lost civilizations. The presence of submerged ruts combined with their apparent antiquity has led some to propose that they were created before the seas rose at the end of the Ice Age, making them remnants of a pre-flood infrastructure. If true, they would represent one of the oldest engineering projects known, predating the great monuments of Egypt and Mesopotamia. Could Malta have been part of a forgotten center of civilization, whose traces now lie beneath the Mediterranean? While mainstream archaeology is cautious about such claims, the unanswered questions leave room for debate. The mystery deepens when the cart ruts are compared to similar features elsewhere. Grooves resembling Malta's have been found in Sicily, Italy, Spain, and even as far as Greece. While these may not be directly connected, they suggest that the idea of carving parallel tracks into stone was not unique to Malta. Were these independent developments or evidence of a broader ancient tradition of transport systems now largely forgotten? If so, then the Maltese ruts are part of a wider puzzle, one stretching across the Mediterranean world. Dating the ruts remains one of the greatest challenges. Without organic material directly associated with their creation, radiocarbon dating is impossible. Estimates vary wildly from the Bronze Age to more than 10,000 years ago. Some archaeologists link the ruts to the builders of Malta's megalithic temples, which date to around 3600 BC, suggesting that the same society responsible for erecting massive stone structures also carved the ruts to transport materials. Others argue that they were made much later, during the classical or even medieval period. Without definitive evidence, the debate remains unresolved, and the ruts continue to resist easy categorization. What makes the cart ruts so compelling is the sense of contradiction they embody. They appear standardized, yet no vehicles exist to match them. They seem practical, yet lead into seas and cliffs. They are abundant, yet their purpose remains elusive. Each possibility opens further questions. Were they roads, channels, or something else entirely? Were they carved by Bronze Age farmers, or by a civilization far older, whose memory survives only in stone? Modern technology may one day provide clearer answers. Detailed surveys, underwater exploration, and comparative studies across the Mediterranean could help unravel their origins. Yet even as research progresses, the ruts retain their aura of enigma. They are silent lines carved into stone speaking of a past that resists explanation. In the end, the cart ruts of Malta remind us that history is not fully written, that even in a small island nation mysteries endure. They challenge assumptions about what ancient societies could or could not achieve, and they whisper of possibilities we cannot yet prove. From pyramids to ruts, the monuments of the past continue to ask questions that outlast empires. If advanced worlds fell once, they can fall again. Until then, the journey continues. We have traveled from deserts to oceans, from temples buried in sand to ruins rising out of the sea. Each site, whether pyramid, city, or carved track, speaks of human ingenuity, persistence, and mystery. And yet, despite centuries of study, many of these questions remain unanswered. How were these monuments truly built? What knowledge has been lost? And what do these enigmas reveal about the civilizations that came before us? Mainstream archaeology offers explanations, but anomalies persist. Fragments that refuse to fit neatly into our timelines. A pyramid aligned with the stars, a city submerged beneath the waves, stones too massive to move, machines centuries ahead of their time. These details whisper of possibilities we cannot fully explain. Were they the results of human brilliance, forgotten techniques, or legacies of civilizations erased by time? The truth may lie buried still, waiting to be uncovered. What these mysteries remind us is that history is not final. It is a puzzle still being assembled, with missing pieces scattered across the globe. Each discovery rewrites a chapter, challenges an assumption, and forces us to look again at what we thought we knew. And if past civilizations could rise to greatness only to fall and vanish, then their stories are not only about them, they are also about us. If advanced worlds fell once, they can fall again. So as we walk among these ruins, gaze at these stones, and trace these forgotten lines, we must accept that we do not have all the answers. We cannot explain these mysteries, not yet, but we can keep searching, keep questioning, and keep the journey alive. Because the past is not just history, it is a mirror, a warning, and an invitation to discover more. If you want to explore further, Join us as we continue this journey into the enigmas of our world. Subscribe, share, and be part of uncovering the forgotten chapters of human history. The mystery is far from over, and together we will keep asking the questions that time has not silenced.